Heyo, my Rollercoaster friends, Johnny5 Alive here, and welcome back to our Project Red Promise build. This one's going to be a doozy. We are building a lot today. We're building basically the entire shell of the build. All the outside, the components, the everything is going to get built in this crazy amount of footage here today. So we have a lot to talk about, a lot to go through. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to reveal the probably bits of the outside at the end of the video as well, so you can kind of see how it looks. But I still want to save the final reveal for like a spotlight. We're going to get Chant to spotlight my build. So you're going to see the components as I'm building them, obviously, and you can always slow it down and pause it at any point. So you're kind of seeing it all as we go. But there are some extra things that I did off screen or in between, some extra surprises that I want to save for the final presentation and that sort of thing. So I don't want to reveal all of it either, but we're going to, at least make these satisfying to see through to the very end. So I'm going to tell you guys what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and my thought process behind things along the way. But basically, if you would have saw the first episode where we blocked things out, I mentioned that that was our core foundation, right? And that doing that bit was the hardest part. Like, you're hemming and hawing on which way you want to go and trying to think about what it's going to look like in your mind. And while it was just a shell, and what we're looking at right here, right now, is just a shell, it really is the foundation for everything. I know where the roof is going to be, that I want a landing pad, that I want a ship, that I want a hydroponics room, and we're going to just build that out. Like, if we're going to have a ship, we need a landing pad, so we need a flat roof, so we have space for a landing pad and a giant ship, which we built separately. And you guys are already seen me build that in a previous episode. So how are we going to fill in that space, and where does that go? That is already predetermined, essentially, based off of that very foundation that could have gone 1,000 different ways. So I kind of know where things are going to be situated in between the empty spots, or what's going to go where. It's just a matter of, like, what does that look like? What is that? How do you fill that in, right? Like, me filling in this glass wall panel bit that sticks out to make up our garage bit, I could have used basic shapes for the roofs and put the panels on top of the shapes. I chose to just fill up the top with panels all on their own. I could have used floor pieces. There's a number of different ways you can approach filling in these gaps. And part of me is figuring that out, right? Like, I don't know what the best way is. And you'll see even some of this footage, we're figuring it out together. We're kind of trying things out, seeing how it looks, maybe adjusting its color, its location, it's rearranging it a little bit, and that sort of thing. One thing I hadn't clearly blocked out at this point was how you're going to get up to the ship, how you're going to get up to the roof. And this is where you see me leave an opening here. And when I was finagling around with those paths at the very top of the video, I had this idea that I could run a path up there. But it becomes problematic because the way stairs work in this game is they're 4-meter grid pieces. And you can make them more narrow, like I did, by dragging bits of the path. You could grab the manipulate dot tool, grab the corners of the stairs, drag it over to be about half length. Now, in order for the guests to actually use them, they have to be at least half length or bigger. If you go slightly under, they won't use them. So we had to make sure they're just slightly bigger, like basically 2 meters, not 4 meters. So I'm cutting them in half. But when you're building the stairs and then having to cut them in half after, because you can't build 2-meter stairs, it becomes a pain. So as I built the thing there, and I was like, I'll get the stairs up there one way or another, I came to a happy realization that this sign thing that I'm building is a perfect opportunity to make a stairwell inside of it. And I thought, ooh, that might be interesting. But again, have fun with that, because you have to use the 4-meter stairs, and that structure is 2 meters wide. So about that, maybe a bit more. So that means I have to figure out how to make the 4-meter stairs go up there and then delete half of it. However, you're at the mercy of these stupid 2-meter cubes. So you got to figure out where they're going to start, where they're going to end, and you can't have paths underneath stairs. They delete them. See, they deleted everything that was underneath it. So now we got to add that crap back in, and it's a nightmare. But once it's hidden in the walls, we can start fixing things afterwards. We can use the stamp tool to delete halves of our paths. You can even grab and manipulate and pull them inward. So what we're doing is we're just taking 4-meter paths and trimming them up and seeing how far we can pull these out without hitting the stairs and da-da-da-da-da. And then like we have little bits there that we're gonna just clean up. So it's a lot of path manipulation, but I learned a lot doing this. It was actually quite fun because I've mentioned this before, coming from Planet Coaster 1, where I did a lot of my buildings had interiors. You work with like 4-meter paths everywhere. You can't do anything else, and you have to do it in a way where you have to do a pathing guide because you could not save paths in Planet Coaster 1. So you had to find a way to convey to people how they're gonna, where they're gonna start the first path and how they're gonna grid fill it all the way from there, and then where they're gonna start the stairs. And if it's even 1 pixel off grid or slightly not positioned correctly, it slowly gets out of sync and the setup becomes botched. So you have to build it kind of like dummy proof in a way where you can get people to figure it out. And you kind of have to do the same thing in Planet Coaster 2, but you get to save the paths in there, so you can get a little bit more crazy. And then you start learning that you can cut paths in half, and you could trim paths, so you can make paths on diagonal angles and circular shapes. You can get a lot more crazy with it. So I took my learnings from Planet Coaster 1, incorporated them here, and then started to evolve them. And from that process of learning how to basically block out an interior and honing new little tricks along the way and finding interesting ways to use the pathing, I think in the next one I could go even crazier. I could have like circular rooms with circular paths and things that come out at an angle, like a 45-degree angle, or 30-degree angle or something like that, right? So we're building our launch pad right now, just to explain what I'm doing while I'm doing it and not get too off track on rambling about random stuff. So we use the rotate trick. So if you attach something to a rotator that's not rotating, you just turn it off. There's and you go to the cog, there's an option to do mirrored and rotational. So we did rotational, and that way we were able to build this entire structure with like 6 pieces, and it just mirrors it all the way around. And then we made it into the Overwatch logo, which I thought was clever. We took the ship that we built from a previous episode 2, which again, I said, reason we're stopping the build, we're stopping the building to make all these props and things, is because they're integral aspects to our build. So we know how big the ship is because we built the ship. Now we know how big the landing pad needs to be. How big does the roof need to be to fit the landing pad? Now we know how big our roof needs to be. And we didn't have to extend the floor. We did extend it backward, but we didn't have to widen our build, really. And we didn't have to do anything like that. So it all kind of worked out because of our meticulous planning and thinking things out and building our pieces separately. So this is an interesting side track that I'm doing, a side quest, is I decided I was going to, this is a little bit unnecessary, but I filled this whole room with dirt, and I kind of just deleted it later. But the idea, the sentiment was, I'm gonna have dirt everywhere and then build the paths around it, so that basically the paths are going through dirt. And this is Mars dirt, Mars soil. And then that way the paths are non-soil and they're going over top. And everywhere that isn't paths will be dirt, which allows us to then fill with plants, potatoes and stuff. So I kind of pictured this whole room to be filled with potatoes, but then have paths in between which had no potatoes, right? And then have this like cool little like ledge thing around the paths. It turned out to be a little bit different than that, but you'll see in the end. We went a different direction. We pivoted, but that's just the way things played out. But we built that whole, we filled that room with dirt pretty quickly. It wasn't too much work or anything. It's just, I was trying to get a feel for the vision of things, and that vision will shift time to time. So what I'm doing here is I'm placing every single recolorable rock in the game. They're not red rocks by default, they're the recolorable rocks. But you can color them red, and that's what we did here. And I scaled them all up to their maximum scale so that I could see how big they would be. Some scale more than others. So I knew, and we talked about this in episode 1, I wanted to have big rocks to help build out the composition so they have peaks and heights, and also build the building into a bit of a cave. So we have, it's almost like we found like a big rock structure on Mars, and we built our base into it, and that protects it from the weathers and the storms of Mars. I think that would be, I don't know, I'm not an architect, but to me it sounds like it would be better than being in an open flat field, in terms of somewhat being covered by the natural elements, right? So, and it's just cool, right? Having a base built into the side of a cave is kind of cool. And part of that stemmed from, I think it was Watchpoint Gibraltar. Yeah, it was that map. Parts of the caves or rooms, computer rooms, and different aspects of that map in Overwatch 2, you'll go into these kind of sci-fi rooms and you can see exposed cave walls built into scaffold and stuff. And I just thought that looked cool, right? And it's like, ooh, this is not just all sci-fi everywhere. It's like built into, you could see the natural environment in little bits here and there. So I took that as inspiration and said, like, I got to use that somehow. And with that, you get a 2-for-1 by those rocks create more noise and shape to the actual build itself. So looking at my build here, I knew I wanted it to feel a little bit more bubbly on the outside, a little bit more sci-fi. And I really was determined to get curved glass. I just thought that would be so cool. This is the only piece, I think, in the game. There's the ones that I use for the walkway. They are not scalable and not rotatable, but these ones are canopies of some sort, and they can be scaled, they can be rotated, and I think that's pretty much the only usable curved glass for this particular situation. And I wasn't married to this idea, but I really wanted to make it work. I thought, holy moly, it just adds that curvy bubbliness that I really want. Like, if you think about Mars bases or concept art from Mars bases or sci-fi movies, they tend to be very bubbly and roundy, like the biodomes and the airlocks, and everything has a bit of a circliness to it. So having that curved glass at the bottom just bubbles out the bottom of the build a little bit. And I thought that would be cool. So we brought out the walls a little bit to give us that. We brought the overhang out to match the length of those bubbles. And with that, now we have to move our floors above it, and then we have to move our trim above that, and then we have to figure out how that's going to work. And I thought, well, if I overlap them in a way, I could put more glass on the top level, and then from there, I can fill that up with like plants and stuff, and you'll see the plants through the glass, and it'll give it a little bit of life and color to what would be otherwise a very white and monotone type build, right? And same with the Red Promise. The reason I brought the sign up is because I put the airlock down below, and that airlock is kind of getting in the way of seeing our sign from the ground level. So now the sign has to go up because we brought the front out. And if you want to be able to read your restaurant sign or your base sign from the street, you're going to have to move it up. But it gave us an opportunity to do more glass domes, which we could then later on fill with plants, which would also bring more color to the build again. And you also notice that I'm coloring the glass blue, and that's intentional. If you look at the color palette of our character, which we've shown in a previous video, Juno, her pants are blue, her jacket's orange. She has little bits of orangey red trim around her jacket, and she has white as well. So the build, it actually represents and is matching to the color palette of our actual character. I'm trying to make the building look like the character. So the blue glass is intentional to match that of her pants, and it's only on the lower half to match that of her pants. And the upper half is orange to match that of her jacket. So we're playing like a little bit of match 2 here, which is it's helping us design itself. So by just deciding, hey, this is how my character is, this is my character, let's make the building match the character, we don't have to really hem and haw about our color choices. We've already predetermined what they are. It's just a matter of like, how much do we use, where do we use it, and when we should go with something else in its place, right? Like, we will hit the front with red, even though red is not technically in Juno's character palette, but it is in the logo Red Promise, and Mars is known as the red planet, even though it's technically kind of orangey. But the idea there is the Red Promise is there's one element that is red. So we want to have a hit of red where possible. But when we use it, we need to be very intentional about it. Like, it needs to pop, it needs to be a focal point, it needs to be important. That's when we use red. And it's fun figuring out when to use that and how to use that. But we also have a little bit of purple. Juno's hair is purple with a little bit of like pink highlights. But we pretty much will only ever use that for our logo for the front, because we want that to be the one thing that stands out, is the Juno's logo. So we'll use that very intentionally one time, and her hair doesn't represent her entirety of her character. It's a very small percentage. So again, it's to just draw attention to her face. So much like that, the same reason the Blizzard designed the character the way they did, we're going to design our building with the same thought process. Draw attention to one particular thing by using one particular color. So again, by looking at how Blizzard designed their character, it kind of pre-designs the way we approach things, which takes a little bit of it alleviates a little bit of the challenge in some ways, because another thing is, like, they designed her blue and orange because they're complementary colors, but they also did it at the same contrast value, which means it's discordant. So the blue is the same darkness value as the orange, which means the rods in your eyes, rods and cones in your eyes see black and white, and one sees color. And basically, the part that sees black and white sees the same thing, but the colors are clearly different, and that's like a discordant value, and they're complementary. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1. So the design that Blizzard put into their characters is actually very, very smart. And I dissected the things that they did that were smart about it, and I'm finding ways to reincorporate that back into the build. And I'll talk more about this stuff in maybe like a bonus video if you guys are interested in it. Let me know down in the comments. But there are little things, like I could actually show you discordance and the law of simultaneous contrast and why I chose certain things, and talk a little bit more about those design decisions, directional forces, where I put certain elements and how it leads your eye back into looking at other things. And I think that will be a fun bonus video if that's something you guys want to see. But I'll speak on little bits here and there like I just did when they come up. So here we're adding a bunch of fans, so this is all thinking about functionality as well. Mars is dusty, so one, we want to cycle the air from the inside back out. So, cycle the air out and new air in. So obviously they would have some sort of like oxygen tank thing that brings in new fresh oxygen, and then these fans push out the carbon dioxide and any lingering dust particles that may have come through any of the airlocks, and also just the random dirt that's getting kicked up from the hydroponics lab. So the fans kind of serve two purposes: cycling carbon dioxide and oxygen around, but also to get the dust off the building and out of the interior. I'm sure there would be dust storms, so having fans near the glass windows is going to help keep the glass clean. So I was just thinking around that. It's not completely architecturally sound, but it's enough there where I put some thought into it. And I think that it's the thought that matters here. It doesn't have to be completely realistic or truly functional. But when you see it, you're like, oh, that's cool, right? And just adding more cool shit to it is awesome. And that's what we're just trying to do, is coolify this build as much as we possibly can by adding little random bits of storytelling to the build. And it also really just helps fill up those negative spaces. There's these long stretches of roof and walls that would otherwise be kind of bland to look at. We already found ways to fill them up. We're gonna have a rocket ship there, a character there, and different things like that. So oh yeah, we're finally gone back to this project. So at the top of the video, we filled in this area, and I put a space for a door there. And I said, as I was building, I realized I could use that big shape at the front of the facade of the build as the stairwell. And it actually was a happy accident. That big kind of round square shape, rounded square shape in the front that was meant to be a directional force that kind of draws your eye around the logo, but to also just create some interesting shape and noise. Having it as the stairwell actually makes the whole thing make sense now. It's actually built there. It works the reverse way now. But it was a happy accident. It happened after the fact, but it's a stairwell that's been incorporated as the logo, but we just did it the other way around. We discovered it as we're going, and it worked out really great. So it was the perfect way to get the stairwell in, and it was much better than adding another stairwell to a room that already was full of stairwells. So I was pretty happy about that. So yeah, rocket ship goes there, character goes there. They're filling up the negative space in front of the building, which would otherwise be kind of plain, and it just gives you more interesting things to look at in the front. We already built those elements out in previous episodes, so they're ready to go, and now we just put them in place, and we go, boom, thumbs up. They look great there, perfect. Thank God we already had them done, and now it just helps us move on to the next thing that much quicker. So we got our bubble domes down on the bottom stairs, and now it's time to get our glass domes up on the upper stairs. Now you might notice that I didn't go with blue for these. So again, her pants are blue, the bottom layer is blue, the mid layer we're avoiding that. We don't want blue on blue on blue on blue. However, having it clear like that, and we're gonna, with the intent that we're gonna fill it up with bushes and crops and, you know, foliage, you're gonna see it through the clear glass a lot better than you would the blue glass. So we're gonna have like a greenhouse effect happening in that upper level, where that's gonna come to life, and it's gonna really draw your eye to what would be otherwise a boring stretch or a boring segment of the side of the building. It's gonna make it look a lot more interesting. So the clear glass there is definitely intentional, with the thought process of adding some hydroponics and foliage to that section of the build. And that's kind of like an ongoing theme here, is we have this big lab in the back that we're building for our hydroponics and all that stuff. But we also, you know, we're very green friendly here, right? It's not just, hey, we grow things in the lab and that's it. No, we want planters throughout the restaurant. We want rooms that are very full of foliage. We want as many plants that we possibly could. In fact, if Mars was terraformed, we would have loved to have plants on the building, outside of the building, around the front of the building, right? We would have a whole garden surrounding the entire build pretty much. But we can't do that because the plants will die because there is no atmosphere on Mars. So the only place that we can actually build plants is anywhere that we have airlocked. So we're building all these little extra rooms on the outside with the intent that, you know, they're good staging rooms for extra plants so that we can find a way to surround our build with greenery without actually putting them outside. So a lot of like intentional designs there. So here we're going to build the rock surface, the rock face, the rock wall, the cave system for our lab. So I didn't want to just put up a bunch of walls, and you could see why. One tile is 4 meters. They're 3 tiles high, so a 12-meter high roof. Doing that all the way across, it would be one giant gray box. It would be ugly, but also fixable. You can. I'm of the saying, and I'm an advocate for. You can always decorate a box until it's pretty, but you can also just try to avoid making the box in the first place. And that's what we're doing here, where it is a boxy structure in nature, but we're building it into the surface of the rocks. And in theory, it kind of makes sense. Like, if the rocks are pretty much airtight, and we've built our structure into them, it's technically airlocked. If there was a crack in the rocks, we might be in trouble, but we're pretending like it's all sealed in, and we're going to build the structure into the rocks. And these rocks are pretty thick, pretty solid. We don't need to worry about any air leakages, and it's just going to add something a little interesting to them. So as I was building that rock surface, I was thinking, do I want rock on top? Well, no, we got the airship there. Why don't we do a glass roof? Because the glass is going to bring in light. And we have this big giant rock wall that we're going to bring light to, which is going to make it pop that much more. But that light is great, photosynthesis for plants, right? Plants love light. So it's going to allow us to grow some plants, bring some light to our plants. And that just creates more opportunities later. And so I think by putting a sky, what do you call it? Like a sky roof in, it just makes sense. It brings light puts light on the rock wall, gives opportunity for future plants. And there's some other happy accidents that will come across along the way, where when you look up at the glass, you can see what will eventually be our radio tower or communications tower, and it looks really cool from down below. And then up, when you're on the glass looking down, you could literally see into the whole room, and it looks freaking awesome. So by designing it in the first place with the intent of just bringing light to the rocks and then light to the plants, you get some other cool knock-on effects, which was kind of cool. And so I'm here for it. It was a pretty neat design. It broke up the monotony of the big square room, but now we have a lot of things making this room more interesting. We have the scaffold on the wall, we got rock, we got a bit of light coming in, but we also have the gray panels holding it all together. So it's a good mixture between like laboratory and construction and Mars. You get a little bit of all of the feels, right? So I'm pretty happy with how this room turned out. But at this point in the build that we're looking at, it's like, I'm still worried. I'm looking at this going, this is a pretty big room. And we have some hydroponic tanks that are half the size of the room in height. When we put them down, what's going to go above them, and how are we going to fill that area? And that's where we shift gears. We shift gears to these. Well, what if there's pipes above them? We can fill up that upper negative space with some pipes, and we could tell a story that, you know, Mars has been said to have water. Maybe if you dig deep enough, you hit enough water. Frozen ice converted into H2O. And then they pump it up and filter it or do whatever to it. And then we just self-sustain. We have our own access to water. We put the mined water into storage water tanks using this beautiful aquatic piping system that I've never used. This is actually a fun set because if you hold F, it snaps to the center pivot, and they've put the center pivot for each of these pipes perfectly where you don't have to fidget anything. They just so snap, 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 snap. Made me feel like I was playing freaking Satisfactory. It was satisfying. You have to finagle some things when you get a little more custom like this. But like, yeah, it went together pretty quickly and I didn't really feel the need to do anything else to it. And the color palette was actually really nice too. I'm gonna have to show that in a separate video, but the blue is the same contrast as the orange rock, which I was talking about before with discordance and the law of simultaneous contrast. And I kind of knew that it would be because the orange that I chose is very similar to her. Well, the character, first of all, the colors that are on her are already discordant and complementary. So they're very samey in value. So by bringing a similar blue or even the exact blue over to similar orange rocks, they're going to be discordant and complementary. So they go really, really well together. Like, it's ridiculous. It just popped and I didn't have to do anything. Like, just blue on orange like that with the same value in brightness. It's clean and you don't need to over decorate it, right? There's no need to go too crazy with a bunch of stuff and fill up that place with just random noise, because it's serving its purpose. It does what it needs to do, and anything else would be just decorating it. But in that case, like if you were running a Mars base, why would you decorate it? You don't need it to look pretty, it's functional. And the way the colors hit are just good enough. So I was pretty satisfied with how that whole hydroponics extra came out. And it's just an extra, right? Like I didn't need to do it, but it tells a story and it gives me a reason to bring pipes inside and fill up the upper negative space of my big room. And again, it says like, hey, we get the water here and it comes from there. It helps with the storytelling. It helps with the environment. Along with that, I was thinking, well, we need communications and ways to like scan and communicate with other, outposts throughout Mars. So we need a communications dish, radar dish, weather dish, all of the above, so we know when sandstorms are coming and all that stuff. So we want to build a radio tower, and that's what we're doing here. But I also had it from the very beginning, an idea that I wanted a radio tower just to help build out the composition. And this might be something I have to show in a separate video, or maybe at the end of this one. But the positioning of said radio tower is pretty intentional. Even when I was building those glass panels, I didn't go all the way to the edge. I needed to leave room for the tower there. And I figured a 4-meter tile should be fine. Radio towers are usually pretty thin. Ours is a little bit thicker than your average tower for this size. So I definitely knew I wanted it there, because when you're looking at it from the 3/4 left side, it fills this interesting spot between the rocks, the ship, and the building. It kind of just helps build the shape of the composition. But then you're looking at it from the 3/4 right side, and it does the same thing from a different angle. And same thing would from the front view. So, right, you see that angle? I was looking at it from that angle. Like, did we hit the angle? Yes, confirmed. So, thinking about the negative space around your build, see where there's an opening between those two rocks. There's a negative space. We're filling that. And it works from multiple different angles for multiple different negative spaces. So when you're building something that just sticks up, whether it be a rock, a tree, a random prop, whatever it may be in any situation, think about how it can fill a negative void for your build. And if you can get it in the right spot, you'll find that the composition starts to like come together a little bit better. And then you'll find other areas that are kind of void of something, negative space, and go, oh, I have an idea for that. And the more you kind of fill in the gaps, the more the composition comes together. And that is the kind of the key factor where I've called out people for having good compositions throughout many of the contests over the years and spotlights. And that's something I'm always thinking of, but also something that I recognize, because I don't just do, while I may not have a bajillion Planet Coaster builds, I built many things, whether it be in Fallout 76, Unreal Tournament, or any other game engine, creative engine, that sort of thing. I'm still thinking about those things while I'm playing other games as well. So it all just kind of comes back around. I would do these things in any art form. So I think about them in terms of Planet Coaster as well. And a simple radio tower can be a dual purpose. From a 3/4 angle from the bottom, it's popping out and just helping your build come together and draw your eye to something interesting, and tell a story as a second knock-on effect. It makes it more believable, more realistic as a build. So that's our radio tower. It's pretty cool. It's a nice little bonus. And then we have our hydroponics, our water pumps. It's another nice bonus. The build is starting to come together in terms of closing it all in. So I guess looking at it now, looks like I'm working on the logo a little bit. So I took one of those big sphere thingies, sci-fi spheres. I wanted to make it look like Mars, like it's a Mars planet sphere. But the white line is intentional to draw a circle around Juno. So it draws your eye to it and literally highlights the thing that I want you to read. Juno's logo is purple, so it literally stands out amongst the rest, but also matches the hair of the character, so it ties the two things together. And later on, we'll put purple flowers in here, which will bring your eye from Juno's purple logo through the purple flowers to the purple hair on the character and literally link them all together. So I'm thinking about these things while I'm designing all of these little things. But the red planet, I wanted to get that in there just as a fun nod to Mars itself, and helps, I don't know, bring in a little bit of that planetariness to it all, and makes the logo more interesting, and it adds more shapes and directional forces to lead your eye around that logo. And it also brings that circle around the line that underlines the red promise. So it's all very like fancy logo-y design stuff. And I keep tweaking it and adding more. You'll look at it, tweak it, and come up with an idea. I came up with this idea with a moon. You'll see that later as well. And I think that came up really nice because she's got a moon in her hair. So I was like, okay. I believe Mars has a couple moons, right? So I kind of like just figured it works. Originally, those two little windows. I think Mars, I would have to Google this, but I think Mars has 2 moons, if I'm not mistaken. And those 2 little windows are like, they kind of look like 2 little moons. So that was kind of like my thought process when I first put that window there. Hey, these kind of look like little moons. Yeah, so it worked as a happy accident when I actually put the red planet there afterwards. Anyways, yeah, so we're filling all this in. I found that the panel, the curved screen, works perfectly for filling in those kind of weird spots. So that was a nice tool to get that all working. How much time do we got left on this recording? 24 minutes. Wow. Wait, 14 more minutes? Math. 14 more minutes. All right. Yeah, cleaning up the trim, getting everything done, but I think pretty much like the structure's there. There's some things wrong with the window. I don't know if that's considered an interior thing or an exterior thing, but we really push the interior in the next episode. Like literally The next episode is the last one, other than like featuring it. At the time of me recording this, Chant is going to spotlight this build, and we've already recorded it. So Chant's going to reveal the build and see it for her first time. And I thought that'd be a fun way to present it, even though you guys are kind of seeing the stuff as we go. You haven't seen everything up close and first person. So, and it'd be fun to get for me to get a spotlight for a change. So I thought it'd be fun. So we got Chant to do the spotlight. She hasn't seen it, so pretty cool. Yeah, so whatever we end up accomplishing here today, the rest is done tomorrow in the next video. And there's a lot left to do at this point. But you can see like the outer structures coming together, right? We got our tanks, and pretty much every wall is closed in except for the front of the garage door there. And a couple doodads here. We're closing in the rock surface now. So there's no like holes or issues or pieces that are left undone for the exterior. And all the planning that we did, it goes back to episode 1 where I showed you like the basic building blocks, the vision of it, and like how the interior was laid out. That was a very important process, and honestly the hardest part. You're hemming and hawing and struggling, and then you see it, and then you're like, I see it. From here, I just have to fill in the rest. And that's what this was. It wasn't a lot of like, yeah, there's some design choices with the logo here and there, and like a couple choices with like how we're going to do the rock wall and how that's going to look. And let's add in a sky window or whatever, and that sort of thing. There's some extra design elements that you're adding in when you're filling in the blanks that you may not have originally saw in your mind in the overall plan, but they're going in the areas that you kind of saw as filler. So you're like, I'm gonna fill this area in with stuff, and then some kind of surprise element kind of came up along the way, kind of like those glass domes at the bottom. I knew I wanted an outdoor patio, and then I realized that's when the airlock came in at the front. That originally I was thinking like we could just make believe that this whole thing is like in a dome. But then I was like, but we don't see that dome. And unless I make a dome, no one's going to really believe that. So if I put plants on the outside and I put a balcony outside, it's not going to seem very believable. And then I, at one point, made the shift, and I'm like, we have to airlock everything. And that's when I realized I need to put glass over the outside patio, and I need to have an airlock for the front door. And we started making a pivot in our design decision at some point for whatever reason, because I just decided, hey, I'm not going to settle for pretending that we're airlocked, and we're just going to actually physically airlock it and make it more realistic. And with that, we had to go in and add stuff to it, but it didn't take much to pivot. We just added a bunch of glass, right? And a couple extensions, which wasn't very hard to do. So we're adding an extra landing pad. We just duplicate the old one and follow the same kind of method, the duplicate, pivot, rotate trick, and we're making a mini landing pad for our rocket ship, because why not? We have one for the big one, we should have one for the small one, and I thought that would be just like a good little idea. Nice little bonus. The rocket's currently just sitting there on rocks, and I think that's just nicer to look at. So it's just helping to break up the noise again, or the blandness of the red rocks there. And whatever we can do to either highlight something, bring your attention to it, or just break up the blandness of the surroundingness of it. And that's what we're doing here as well. Like, okay, if somebody downloads my blueprint and places it on grass, that sucks. And I don't want it to be like, paint here, paint there, paint there. I hate it when people give me painting instructions when they can just build it in themselves. And so I'm going to take my own advice and build it in myself. So we're going to decal the entire outside so it looks like it's built on red rock. If you want to paint sand around it, sure. But if you don't, it's also fine, because it's self-painted, I guess. It has rock and decals, and there's a slice of Mars right there. And if you want to build out the surrounding area to be similar, go right ahead, but it's not necessary. So that's what I recommend everyone do with their builds, is to try to make them feel out of the box immersive. And I definitely appreciate it when people do that. So I'm going to do that as well. And I just like how clean it is. And honestly, I got to shout out, I can't give a shout out to the person because I don't remember their name, but somebody did a beachy build for the coaster contest, and they surrounded their pathways with sand using the moss decal. And I was like, that is brilliant. I feel like I haven't seen that. And I'm using that idea. So a lot of the things that I see over the years doing spotlights, I've taken mental notes on, and I would say I feel like I'm a better builder in this game than way better builder in this game than I last was. And I haven't built anything in between. So I'm evolving and getting better as a builder by simply looking at your guys' stuff. So I kind of surprised myself how much little things I noticed from your guys' builds came into play here. And, the trim and how much attention to detail people put into things, even having to match that quality, live up to people's standards, and, do the bare minimum what I see other people doing. And when it comes to restaurants and things like that, we see people doing diner menus and all sorts of crazy stuff. So, we need that level of detail as well. So I think it also puts me in a peculiar position, because I also feel like I've seen so many things that my brain gets confused on which direction to take it. And it's also like, I feel like I've seen a lot of things that I feel like, oh, I've seen that before. Should I do it? Right? How do you do something that hasn't been done when you've seen everything that's been done? It's a weird, and that's why I'm doing Overwatch, because I haven't seen someone do Overwatch yet. And it's an untouched area that I like, that I can, tap into, that I pretty much know no one else has touched. So that's why this project has been pretty much original, right? Other than the fact that it's not original because it's Overwatch, but it's original to Planko. I don't feel like there's a lot of builds that are like it. Even that Halo build had some kind of similar ships and rovers and things like that, but it's all Halo inspired, right? It looks completely different than my stuff. And you could distinctly tell mine's more Overwatchy and the other Halo build's more Halo-y. So, but they're both very sci-fi heavy inspired and unique in their own ways. So it was a fun build for me, where I didn't feel like I was stepping on anyone's toes or copying anyone's ideas, and I could kind of just get into it. So I think finding that is important in the first place. And I think that's why I do a lot of Plankofication, like Cosmic Cow, because I feel like it's a brand that Frontier made that they don't really have a lot of Cosmic Cow blueprints in the game. So it's like, let me expand what you started, because not everybody's doing that, and it just feels proper to do, like, expand on the game itself, right? It's like, well, we should have more Cosmic Cow blueprints, so let me make them. And I think it's a natural way to build on the game's universe. So that's why I've always kind of been drawn to it, because it feels like every other idea I try to think of, someone else is already doing. Right? Okay, we got 5 minutes left in the build. We're putting lights in now, so you guys get to see how I do lighting. We could talk about it a little bit. You already saw I put some, what are they called? Searchlights or whatever they're called in. Put them around. I'm trying to draw some light to the actual sign, Red Promise. Draw a spotlight to Juno. I want to put a light on that, but I also want it to be colorful. So we're going to do one bit of red lighting, and that's going to hit the front, Red Promise. It's going to be a very red front, inviting you in. And then pretty much everywhere else, it's going to be bluey. And we'll have air control lights, traffic control lights, just little spots of light. And then we're going to use spotlights to light up our entrances. So our front door, our side doors, our airlocks, our garage, anywhere that has an entry point we want to draw attention to lead your eye inward, but to also navigate you inward to the places that you should be going while exploring the build. Did we cut that out? That moon getting there, I must have done that off screen, but I made that moon out of basic shapes because it's part of her hair, it's part of her logo, it's part of her design. So by designing that into the logo, it kind of just makes sense. So, and it's like a moon that's orbiting Mars. So it was just a perfect tie-in, and it covered up that window just perfectly. So that little moon there was a nice little touch, and we put a little light on it, a little purple light to just make it glow a little bit better. And bring a little bit of red. We have to build our own little light post things to kind of blend it all in. And I end up changing their colors and trying to make it all work. And then we bring more light onto it. I probably do even more lighting after this video that you guys don't see. But this is generally about the like a good amount of light coverage. But then we make tweaks in between recordings, after recordings, for the final video. So light is always getting tweaked, but this is the base foundation of the light setup, and you guys get like a pretty good feel of where all the lights are going and why, and drawing attention to certain elements and highlighting other elements, and also just creating random noise to make it feel like more sci-fi. So the lighting on this one is like a pretty fun project, I'd say. I really enjoyed doing the nighttime lighting on this. This is quite fun. A little bit tedious, though, at times. There's a lot, like the scaffold above where the spaceship is. You just need a lot of little tiny lights everywhere to make it feel spacey and sci-fi from a distance. Like, even airports and airstrips have a lot of lights. You can see, I mean, because the planes are coming in, they need to see where they're landing and all that stuff. And so you need a ton of them, an absolute ton. But you want them to be more like decorational lights, not light sources. So we add the light sources in manually here. So there's decorational lights and then light sources. And you need a mixture of both, in my opinion, for something to stand out. Like the ones I just put around the windows at the bottom. Those are just decorational. They're not really providing or giving off a whole lot of light. They're just there to, you know, dazzle the eyes. And same with these. These are like literally just to dazzle the eyes. Yeah, they give off a little bit of light, but when you zoom out, it's like, it's very insignificant. So we just boom, 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 slam them everywhere. And when you zoom out, it's kind of bedazzling, and it's like very traffic control-y looking. So it's got a neat aesthetic to it. And we put a lot more of those around here on the scaffold, which also gives it the same vibe. And that's, yeah, it's just a vibe check. That's all we're doing here. Putting all that stuff in there. Looks like we're on the last minute of footage. So we're going to hop in a game. We're going to look at, I'm going to try to find a save file where it's about this far, but doesn't have the interior, because I don't want you guys to see in the windows I don't want you guys to see what we're doing in the next episode. So I'm going to see if I can find a save file where it's just this and no interior, and we can have a look at the build. And then tomorrow will be the last video where we literally just spend 2,000 pieces decorating this whole thing. Essentially, just going ham with decorating. Just little doodads, menus, diners, hydroponics, plants, you name it. Extra lights, Easter eggs, and then we got something special for the presentation. So let's hop over to game and check it out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, looks like this is about the save file that we had at the end of that recording. There's no interior, but we have the outside all done. And we could talk a little bit about some of those, well, I guess that shows there will be more lighting that's added to this, but the ship has some. We have these air control lights. They just dazzle the eye a little bit. We put a bit of an orange light on that and highlight the windows a bit, put a red glow. We'll put even more of a red glow on it later. I wasn't satisfied by this. We got a bit of a light on our character as well as our ship. We're drawing attention to the doorways, and there's enough light that if you needed to go out here and do maintenance on something, you can see what you're doing. So, but there's no lighting on the interior, completely dark. So once we add all these fun lights in here, you're going to see that from the outside inward, from the outside in, which will effectively change how it looks even more. So that's not really the final nighttime preview, and you'll have to wait and see later on what that looks like. But you can see the shell, and again, going back to episode 1 when we had just that basic blocking of the build out front, right? And I said that is basically the hardest part. If you can figure out what your layout is going to look like, how that front facade is tied into it, and what kind of ideas you have planned for next, what's next, which I had, even though you didn't see what I had in mind, I explained to you guys what I had in mind. And I had the vision at that point. So we just had a few walls up, a little concept over here for a garage, an idea for a logo in front, a floor plan for both downstairs, right? Nothing much has changed here. It's still the same kind of floor plan that you guys originally saw in episode 1. And everything that I talked about is just coming to fruition a little bit, right? And we're seeing how that, you know, now that it has 4 walls and a roof on top of it, that it's still the exact same build. We're just filling in the blanks with the things that we had in mind. And that, again, that's why it's the hardest part, is because you have to have that vision so that you can get going on the rest. And I stumbled and struggled to get that first episode out, to get it to that point, even though it didn't look like it. It's all speed built and it's all sped up, but there's a lot of hemming and hawing, just sitting there with like a piece of floor down and me on pause mode going, what am I gonna do? And then from there, it's like, you start seeing it all come together. And it really, this is just filled in the blank. The rock wall is now in like I planned it to be. It looks a little different than I had in my mind. Like this came kind of poking out with the little fan there, and the way this looks, it's like, oh, that looked better than I kind of had in my mind. And same with this, that was a happy accident. And as I mentioned, there's another happy accident that happens here. Now that we have our control tower in there, it's like, ooh, I wanted a tower there, but I didn't really think about how that was going to interact with the window. Oh, bonus, that's cool, right? And I didn't know if this would be just a solid wall or whatever, but it made sense to add glass here because it brings light to our crops again. So just kind of copy pasted what we did over here, but repurposed it in a different way and made it slightly bigger in width and switched it up a little bit. So it's not as high, it's lower down, it's wider, and we just switched up the variation. And then this was a bonus surprise that I added in after, which I didn't really initially see in my original vision. So the way this changed, so, you know, as long as you have a general direction, you can make pivots from that point. And the pivots that I made based off the direction I had planned were fun surprises to discover along the way that I never would have really foresaw. So it was a lot of fun kind of figuring out how this all fills in and how it comes together. But we generally knew that we were going to have a ship here and a landing pad and some rocks sticking out the back and a radio tower at the top. And you can see how that really helps the composition now. We have this rock, the ship, the rock behind it, the tower, this tower filling in this kind of negative space up here. Even like how this wall, which would normally just be kind of bland, we have the vents to fill in to make it more interesting. This is pretty bland, and we don't want more vents here because it's just going to make it look too many vents, right? It'll just be too much vent spam and it becomes too noisy. So just add a couple hits of orange to break up the contrast, and it just kind of like breaks it up without actually really adding much. But then we also have our character up there, which helps fill that void, as well as like the ship, depending on the angle that you're looking at it, right? These things are filling up that void. And then with our tower there, you know, from the front view here, it fills also a nice negative spot. If we remove the character, we move the light, we remove the tower, you see the problem, right? Suddenly it's like, this building looks a little weird. Something wrong with the negative space here. And if we remove the flange, like, yeah, this doesn't look very well thought out. But those things help cover up the truth, if you will. And again, our tower here, it's filling a massive negative void that would have otherwise been extremely bland. And same with our ship. It's just adding a little bit of contour back here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way this looks back here now. It's kind of cozy. It's kind of like a nook, but it's very industrial. You would never know that this is a restaurant, which is advertised on the front, but it's technically not. It's like a repurposed space station, self-sufficient. And we happen to also have a restaurant inside. So it's kind of neat. It's more industrial. It's very satisfactory feeling back here. And then it's much like a restaurant shop contest up here. It tells different stories depending on how you look at it. feels like an Overwatch base from this angle. The vision's starting to come together, right? And from here, I'm in a very interesting position at the time of this, because look at this disaster of an interior. Nothing is filled in. These floors don't meet these floors. These don't have doors. There's flickering. These are not embedded or built in any smart or creative designerly way. We have no lights. We have no lab. We have no hydroponics. We just have dirt. It's a pretty daunting task going, how am I going to fill all this up? And at this very, very moment, we are sitting at, well, we still have our small character as well. So we're at about 5,000 pieces. So I had 3,000 pieces to fully decorate it, extra props on the outside. You know, we want crates and little doodads and extras on the outside, but then fully, not only do we have to decorate the inside, we have to finish the inside. It needs walls. So there's a lot of construction that still needs to happen. Structure, even this, like, this is not airlocked. You open this door, you're going to kill everybody. So we need like a wall. We have to close this in, but I want to see in, so we need glass. How's that look? How's that build in? How many pieces is that going to take? So there's still a lot to be done, right? But at this point, we know we don't need to knock any walls down. It all makes sense. The only thing that I was unhappy about was these stairs should start here. You should go into this room and then go up the stairs, but that would actually run the stairs into the window. So I would have had to have pushed this whole segment out one. And I didn't really realize that until I started putting these walls up in the next episode. Because originally I thought, yeah, it would be like an open layout, but then I thought everyone's going to die when this door opens. So at some point along the way, like I said, I decided to come up with this airlock system, and that meant like we also have to have domes or glass on the outside. So I pivoted at some point, and because I pivoted after I had already planned out this interior, this was already going to be open. I didn't plan for that. So we have an error where the stairs go up to a door when the stairs should be just in the room. So you can come through this door and then walk up the stairs, and you can access these stairs from this room or this room, you know, or yeah, so whatever. You go in here, then you use the stairs, but you have to actually go in here to use the stairs, and that's stupid. So I have one thing that's like architecturally stupid and that was not floor planned out. And you know, we run into these problems, we make mistakes, and we're all human. That was one of my errors that I'm just going to highlight to you guys because it's there and it bothered me. You guys probably may not have commented on it or noticed it, but you'll see in the next video, it's just like door, 2 stairs, and it's a little weird. Yeah, it's a little weird for sure, but I would have to re-push this wall over, rebuild everything, extend this, and that changes the dynamic of all of this, and that's going to extend this by an extra tile as well. Not worth it. We just learn for next time. It's one of those things. And again, it all comes down to my whole thing about me planning, making pivots along the way. I think next time I go to plan something like this, I can foresee those pivots a little clearer now. And I can think about the floor plan a little clearer now. It's because I was a little bit rusty and I hadn't done the pathing system in Planet Coaster 2 yet. I haven't really thought things through in a while. And this is a little bit more of a dynamic layout than I was used to doing in Planet Coaster 1. So I think for the next build, I would probably like learn from these mistakes a little bit, or, you know, it would be a little bit easier to design a layout. So fun things to learn from my mistakes and to think about for yourself. But again, like having that floor plan from the beginning, before you're really throwing up walls, before you're really throwing up windows and filling in the gaps, it's really important. And like I said, it's so important that even something as small as stairs, wanting to push them back, isn't really an option if you didn't plan it that far in advance or that early on. Or it can be, but you're just you're doing things twice and it becomes very messy and you're ripping down walls, and you want to avoid that because it causes fatigue. You get kind of burnt out. You want the process to flow a little nicer so that you can, you know, stay in a flow state and not constantly break momentum. So those are my pointers, those are my tips, those are my thoughts on my build, and that is a look at the kind of shell of my build and how it came together up until this point. In the next video, we finish the build. It's done. We're going to put 3,200 pieces in the next video. So I'll see you guys in that one. Thank you so much for watching. Bye now.